What up, though? Anyone who's here for the first time, welcome. And go back and start at the first video and work your way up after you look at this video. Anyone who's been here before, welcome back. HNN. It says, with the support from the University of Richmond, HNN History News Network, Historians History, August 13th, 2007. It's time to face the whole truth about the Atlantic slave trade by Sheldon M. Stern. Mr. Stern taught African American history at the college level for a decade before becoming historian at the John F. Kennedy Library and Museum 1977 through 1999, where he designed the museum's first civil rights exhibit. This is by Sheldon M. Stern. Mr. Stern taught African American history. We know that there is no such thing as an African American. If you're from the place that is termed Africa, I'm pretty sure the people of that place would tell you who their people are and what they call the place that their people sprouted from. Africa is more of a general term, kind of like Cherokee or things of that nature. There is no such thing as an African American or Black American. These people are typically the people who are properly known as American Indians. However, my people, my mother and father, gave me a name. They called me something, and that's what I call myself. You should do the same because they called you something for a reason. Now, if you want to know what your people called themselves in the 1700s or 1800s or 16 or 15 or 1400s, you should go and look and try to find out what they called themselves. Many of the places that they are said to have come from, or many of the places that they were during their travels, a lot of times are named after them. Look, the short of it is, stop calling yourself something that somebody else called you and ignoring what your mama and daddy called you. If you want to know what your people called you, don't get caught up in you got to find your tribe or your this or your that. Go find out what your people called themselves. What did they call themselves? A good starting point is what they called you. They called you what they called you for a reason. Your mother and father, they may not have known the exact reason that when they looked at you, the name that they wanted to call you popped in their heads. They may not know specifically why, but it just may be in the fabric of who they is. Let's shake it. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Aldous Huxley, Proper Studies, 1927. It's interesting that they follow up Mr. Stern taught African American history with facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. Will what would become of us, or what has become of us for ignoring the fact that there's no such thing as an African American or a black? On June 21st, 2007, the Freedom Schooner Amistad, you saw that movie? I saw that movie. It was a pretty good movie. Began an 18-month Atlantic freedom tour to retrace the route of the Atlantic slave trade, owned and operated by Amistad America, Inc. Oh, they're not speaking of the movie. They're speaking of, I guess you would say, a cruise. They going on a cruise. On June 21st, 2007, the Freedom Schooner Amistad began an 18-month Atlantic freedom tour to retrace the route of the Atlantic slave trade, owned and operated by Amistad America, Inc. The Amistad American, Inc., the story of the Amistad is now a business. And they doing tours. They doing cruises. So you can trace the route of the so-called Atlantic slave trade traders and victims, or theoretical victims. Why would you want to do that? If it was such a horrific thing, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to trace the steps, trace the bloody, shackled, disgusting, despicable steps that they had to endure? Why would you want to relive that? The recreated Amistad will visit ports in Canada, England, the United States, and West Africa to commemorate the story of the 1839 Amistad Revolt. 1839, do you know where your people were in 1839? It's not that difficult. 1839 is like yesterday. Amistad Revolt, and to mark the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the international slave trade in England, 1807, and the U.S., 1808. Amistad America, organization called Amistad America. Wow, capitalizing on a thing. Amistad America is an educational organization committed to improve relationships between races and cultures by acknowledging our common experiences and encouraging dialogue that is based upon respect. The recreated Amistad serves as a floating classroom icon and as a monument to the millions of souls that were broken or lost as a result of the insidious transatlantic slave trade. The vessel offers an important message for all Americans about our collective history and future. The vessel offers an important message for all Americans about our collective history and future. First, you would have to know who the Americans are. The Americans aren't Anglo-Saxons. The Americans ain't nobody that come from Afro-Eurasia. The Americans come from the Americas, which is from the tippity top of Canada to the biggity bottom of Argentina and all the islands surrounding, right? But who call themselves Americans today? Everybody that come here. Every foreigner that come here. Contrary to popular belief or popular understanding, the people that are termed Mexicans, whether they are the indigenous Mexicans or not, they seem to be the focus of today, capturing them, gathering them up. Now, whether or not I think is wrong, whether or not I think they deserve to be packed up, that's not my point. My point is that we have to know that the Americas are from the top of Canada to the bottom of Argentina. Okay? So who are the Americans? Who are the American Indians? And when I say American Indians, it's still a broad name. If your people from Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Illinois, Virginia, North, South Carolina, Kentucky, all these places, Florida, Tennessee, Missouri, Ohio, Texas, Cali, no matter where your people from, Arkansas, no matter where they from, New York, guess what? Before the lines on the map, your people went where they wanted to go. They was free. Right? They was free. When they trying to grab up people because they want to make this a great place again, guess what? The very people that want to make it great, they have no idea what that means because it was great before they got here. I'm talking all the people who want to control you, because you do know that to govern means to control. But you support governance. You support it. You want to be controlled. You don't think you can do it on your own because you don't know how it was before foreigners got here in mass. And when I say foreigners, I mean people that are not from the Americas. Are you from the Americas, or are you a black? Are you a Easter bunny or tooth fairy? Confronting the history of the Atlantic slave trade requires more than a sentence acknowledging that the Amistad prisoners had been captured in Africa by Africans who sold them to European slave traders. Think a little deeper than you normally think. When someone says Africa by Africans to you, what do you think? When somebody says European slave traders, what do you think? Do you think when you hear the words Africa by Africans, do you think African people? When you hear European slave traders, do you think European people? Do you understand how many people that is? How many different people? Listen, you as different from your cousin as you are from a stranger walking on the street. Y'all think different. Y'all not the same. Y'all blood. That's your people's. But y'all think differently. Think about your best friend. Think about people who have been your, I shouldn't say friends, I shouldn't say Quakers. Think about people who've you embraced throughout the years. And now you're no longer tight with those people, not because anything negative happened and separated you, but just because you were different. You chose different courses to go. When you hear Africa by Africans, when you hear Europeans, understand these are people. These are individuals who make up the group. Unless you get to know one of them, you have no idea who these people talking about. You don't know who you are. Do you know who you is? Seriously. Do you know who your people is? How much time have you put into learning? So many family members I wish I could have sat at their feet. They wanted me to, but they no longer here right now. Website readers must understand that this terrible traffic in millions of human beings had been, as affirmed by the PBS Africans in America series, a joint venture. During this era, Africans and Europeans stood together as equals, companions in commerce and profit. Kings exchanged respectful letters across color lines and addressed each other as colleagues. Natives of the two continents were tied into a common economy. Say they was friends. And it say the two continents, speaking of Africa and Europe, which you do know that you can go from the northernmost part of Europe to the southernmost part of Africa without crossing a body of water. You do know that, right? Right? And you do understand on that particular soil portion, there's so many people that you can't even imagine. But you willing to put people in a box. You willing to put all those people in a box. Don't be like that. Do you think all the people in the place that we term as Africa, you think all those people the same? You think all those people think the same? You think all Europeans the same? You think all Europeans the same complexion? You think they want to be called Europeans? How many of them Europeans you think want to be called Europeans? How many of the people in Africa you think want to be called Africans? Do you know? Incomplete depictions of the Atlantic slave trade are, in fact, quite common. My 2003 study, a 49 state U.S. history standard, revealed that not one of these guides to classroom content even mentioned the key role of Africans in supplying the Atlantic slave trade. In Africa itself, however, the slave trade is remembered quite differently. Nigerians, for example, explicitly teach about their own role in the trade. They say, it says, where did the supply of slaves come from? The Portuguese themselves kidnapped some Africans, but the bulk of the supply came from the Nigerians. These Nigerian middlemen moved to the interior where they captured other Nigerians who belonged to other communities. The middlemen also purchased many of the slaves from the people in the interior. Many Nigerian middlemen began to depend totally on the slave trade and neglected every other business and occupation. It says many Nigerian middlemen began to depend totally on the slave trade and neglected every other business and occupation. They just wanted to focus on that. They just wanted to focus on snatching up people. You think that's true? Do you think that's true? They make it sound so romantic. The result was that when the trade was abolished by England in 1807, these Nigerians began to protest. As years went by and the trade collapsed, such Nigerians lost their sources of income and became impoverished. In Ghana, politician and educator Samuel Suleimana Fusini has acknowledged that his Ashanti ancestors accumulated their great wealth by abducting, capturing, and kidnapping Africans and selling them as slaves. It says in Ghana, politician and educator Samuel Suleimana Fusini, politician, has acknowledged that his Ashanti ancestors accumulated their great wealth by abducting, capturing, and kidnapping Africans and selling them as slaves. Now, I'm not saying that his ancestors didn't do it. but he's a politician. Do you think he wouldn't say what he was told to say? Or do you think he wouldn't say whatever would be beneficial to him and ensure that he gain capital? Maybe, maybe not. I'm just saying. It's easy to say what your ancestors did in such a broad way. It says Samuel Suleimana Fusini has acknowledged that his Ashanti ancestors accumulated their great wealth by abducting, capturing, kidnapping Africans and selling them as slaves. Did he say that? Did he acknowledge that? To keep the lie alive? To fight on that lie? To keep fighting on that lie? In 2000, at an observance attended by delegates from several European counties or countries and the United States, officials from Benin publicized President Matthew Carical's apology for his country's role in selling fellow Africans by the millions to white slave traders. First of all, there's no such thing as a white human, okay? Although you've seen some that may have been close, you was like, whoa, that person almost the color of snow, but they wasn't white. I guarantee you they wasn't white. However, we do know that the meaning of WIGHT, white, means creature. So selling fellow Africans. Why didn't he say selling fellow people from Benin? He said a more broader thing, a more all-encompassing thing, a more theoretical thing. He said a more tooth fairy, a more Easter bunny thing. He said selling fellow Africans by the millions to creatures. Pay attention to what they say. Pay attention to what the article says. It's just an article. It's just an article. It's just words on paper. See, that's what I'm talking about. And this ain't no shot to the current administration with the whole making this place great again. This is not a shot to them because the people before them, everybody who's held that office, listen, I want them to pack up their people and go home because none of them have been Americans. Now, where the American is in all of this, I can't tell you. Is he in the back pulling the strings like the Wizard of Oz? I don't know. But what I'm saying is that all them need to pack up their people and leave. But when they talk about making this place great again or making it great, listen, they don't understand what that is. Because when that was happening, they wasn't here. How can you come from somewhere where you thirsty, begging for a popsicle and say you gonna come somewhere else and make that place great? That place was already great. That's why you wanted to come. So President Matthew Carical's apology for his country's role in selling fellow Africans in his country's role. What is a country? A country is something they call a landmass or a soil portion a country, right? It's a certain amount of soil, a certain amount of land that they call a country. He said he apologizes for his country. He apologizes for the soil's role. It ain't like he just gave us a list of people. who he apologizing on behalf of, right? Right. Let's shake it. A year later, wait a minute. Is all these places on this continent that we term as Africa, is all these different administrators and dignitaries, is all them falling in line and giving their apologies one after the other for what? What they apologizing for? We know this whole thing is fake. Why is they apologizing? They know too. This is crazy. A year later, Senegal's president Abdoulaye Wade, himself the descendant of generations of slave owning and slave trading slaves. Now, when they say slave, what comes to your mind? What comes to your mind when they say slave? Go ahead, think for a second and say it. Say it out loud to yourself. You don't have to be loud, but just say it to yourself. When you see the word slave owning and slave trading, when you see the word slave, what comes to your mind? Know what come to my mind? Slav. You know what else come to my mind? A fairy tale. But you know what? You know, I've encountered people who will call their ancestors slaves before they say their name. And they don't say their name because they don't know their name. But they will call them a slave to me. Basically a stranger. A year later, Senegal's president Abdoulaye Wade, himself the descendant of generations of slave owning and slave trading African kings, urged Europeans, Americans, and Africans to acknowledge publicly and teach openly about their shared responsibility for the Atlantic slave trade. Don't put Americans in there. And don't put Europeans, and don't put Africans in there. Definitely don't put none of these people in there. Ain't none of us agree. Ain't none of us agree with this fairy tale. And ain't none of us definitely agree with none of them practices that's still going on today. It's snatching people up. This white van that they telling us about when we get out of school, when we in elementary school, this white van who supposed to be snatching shorties up. They've been doing that for the longest time. Urged Europeans, Americans, and Africans to acknowledge publicly and teach openly about their shared responsibility for the Atlantic slave trade. Wade's remarks came months after the release of Adangaman by Ivory Coast director Roger Known Mbala, the first African film to look at African involvement in the slave trade with the West. Who gives a shit about a fucking film? Why is they telling us about a movie, man? This is what they do. This is what people do. This is what we've amounted to. We've amounted to something fake. We've amounted to some. They mention an African film. Is it Nigerian film? Is it a Timbuktu film? Is it a Zanzibar film? Is it a Kenyan film? Huh? Is it a Moroccan film? A Tunisian film? A Djibouti film? Is it a South African film? Is it a Zimbabwe film? A Uganda film? A Congo film? No, it's an African film to look at African involvement in the slave trade with the West. Now, we are taught that the the planet is a spinning globe, and it tells us that they tell us it's a planet, a plane, right? And it's a spinning globe. If it's spinning, how is it west or east? Tell me. If it's spinning, how do you determine what is west and what is east? If it's spinning, what is the west and what is the east? Is it that which is outside of the spinning ball? Or is it the spinning ball itself? That's another show. It's up to us, Mbala insisted, to talk about slavery. No, it's up to you, which you've done with your African film. I don't want to talk about it no more. I'm done. I'm tired of it. Kinda. To talk about slavery. Open the wounds of what we've always hidden and stop being pueril. Pueril. I gotta look that word up. When we put responsibility on others in our own oral tradition, slavery is left out purposefully, maybe because it didn't happen in the way that you say it's happening. Slav, I thought you was African, not a Slav, not Slavic, purposefully, because Africans are ashamed when we confront slavery. And when he says African, who is he speaking of specifically? See, you have to ask these questions. You have to ask specifically who these people are speaking of. Because a lot of times they're speaking theoretically. It says, Da Borgia Leone of Burkina Faso's Ministry of Culture. Whoa. Now we in Burkina Faso's Ministry of Culture and Art. We need this kind of film to show our children this part of our history, that it happened among us. Since when Burkina Faso jumping into the mix saying it's a part of their history? Several television productions of the last decade have acknowledged these facts. The African Trade History Channel International 2000 begins with the visit by a group of African Americans to the infamous slave castle and door of no return on Gorée Island off the coast of Senegal. Appalled by the cruelties of the Europeans, the narrator relates, the visitors become curious as to how Africans fell into their hands. Their African guide admits that this history is difficult to tell and hard to believe because it's a lie. Because they lie, right? They lie. Period, point blank, they lie. It's a tourist attraction. And who are the tourists today as we read this article? The African American, the non-existent people. There's no such thing as an African American. You think you African American? Let's break it down. Let's take African first. You African? Okay. Where in Africa? Where? What kind of African? A Nigerian? Are you from Burkina Faso? Now, let's take American. You know you an American. You definitely can tell me where in America your people from, right? Right? African American to the infamous slave castle. It's so romantic. And you so connected to it. And door of no return on Gorée Island off the coast of Senegal. Appalled by the cruelties of the Europeans. Appalled at those Europeans, those theoretical people that we just gonna call Europeans that encompass billions of people. The narrator relates the visitors become curious as to how Africans fell into their hands. Africans, the other theoretical people who encompasses billions of people who are different from one another and think differently. Their African guide admits that this history is difficult to tell and hard to believe. Yeah, because he got to keep up with his lies. It's hard to tell because maybe he didn't spend enough time learning about the lie. And he need to keep from laughing because it's so stupid. All the tribes were involved in the slave trade, no exemptions. All the tribes were involved in the slave trade, no exemptions. So everybody, when you say tribes, do you mean the shorties too? So little shorties was involved in the slave trade. I wonder how they was involved though. No exemptions. The African Americans were staggered. This is what the African Americans said. So we really can't blame the Europeans, one declares. We sold our own. Listen. The African Americans were staggered. The African Americans. This is saying more than one African American, because it said the African Americans, they were staggered. And it says, so we really can't blame the Europeans. One African American declares. Just one African American, some theoretical human being that we don't know their name. We have no idea. But one African American says, so we can't really blame the Europeans, one declared. We sold our own. What do you mean we? I guess the African American that said we can't really blame the Europeans, we sold our own. I guess that African American was a part of all the tribes were involved in the slave trade, no exemptions. These African Americans can't even tell me the first name of each of their 16 great grandparents and where they were born and around what year they was born. But they can tell me that they can't blame the Europeans because they sold their own into slavery. So, a note. Up to this point, there are no dates. Have you noticed that? Up to this point, there are no dates mentioned, which makes it difficult to know when these atrocities took place, right? Think about this. There are no dates. Why haven't they named any dates? And as I'm looking down the paper, I see PBS, and it's, listen, man, there are no dates, man. We're not reading dates here. We're reading words on paper. The words on paper is the downfall, okay? If you self-sufficient taking care of your family, why you need words on a paper? Why you need to write something? Why you need to read something? If you taking care of your family, if you know how to fish, if you know how to hunt, if you know how to skin the fish and eat it right there on the shore, while you talking to your homie or you talking to your home girl, you understand? Or you talking to your auntie, your uncle, your cousin, your grandpa, your grandma, your mama, your daddy, your brother, your sister. If you sitting right there, you catch some fish, you eat it on the shore, and you watching the sun go down. Why would you need to write anything down? And why would you need to read anything? The white man did not introduce slavery to Africa. And by the 15th century, the 1400s, men with dark skin had become quite comfortable with the concept of man as property. Long before the arrival of Europeans on West Africa's coast, the two continents shared a common acceptance of slavery. Europeans on West Africa's coast, the two continents shared a common acceptance of slavery as an unavoidable and necessary, perhaps even desirable fact of existence. The commerce between the two continents, as tragic as it would become, developed upon familiar territory. Slavery was not a twisted European manipulation. Although Europe capitalized on a mutual understanding and greedily expanded the slave trade into what would become a horrific enterprise, it was a thunder that had no sound. How romantic. Ah, they are so poetic. Tribe stalked tribe. Tribes. Can you listen to that? Tribe stalked tribe. This tribe word, I'm really starting not to like this word tribe. I'm really starting to not like the word nation. You understand me? And I'm really starting to not like any of the names given to us by somebody else other than our people. Tribe stalked tribe, and eventually more than 20 million Africans will be kidnapped in their own homeland. Historians estimate that 10 million of these abducted Africans never even made it to the slave ships. Did you hear that? Historians estimate that 10 million of these abducted Africans never even made it to the slave ships. So you got 10 million people plus the 12.5, 12, anywhere from 12.5 is what they say to some people. Was it Stokely Carmichael? Some people say 100 million along the Middle Passage. So we talking about 10 million never made it to the slave ships. Most died on the march to the sea. So 10 million people died on the march to the sea. How long did it take for 10 million people to be marched? You want the answer to how long it took? It took 0 seconds. Because it's fiction. Still chained, yoked, and shackled by their African captors before they ever laid eyes on a white slave trader, the survivors were either purchased by European slave dealers or instantly beheaded by the African traders in sight of the slave ship captain if they could not be sold. The survivors were either purchased by European slave dealers or instantly beheaded by the African traders. What did they said? Survivors? No, they're not survivors. They were instantly beheaded by the African traders in the sight of the slave ship captain if they could not be sold. This reminded me of these movies they be making. You know how these Anglo-Saxons love to make these horror movies, the gore, the gruesome movies. They giving you a little bit of that right now. Let's get into this. Failure to educate young Americans about the whole story of Atlantic slave trade threatens to divide our nation and undermine our civic unity and belief in the historical legitimacy of our democratic institutions. See, we would believe this last line that I just wrote if we didn't want you to go home today. Go home today. Take your words and go home. Failure to educate young Americans about the whole story of Atlantic slave trade threatens to divide our nation. Stand up, put your hand on your heart, get your flag out. Okay, this one of them moments. Failure to think, hear it in your head. Hear the Star Spangled Banner in your head while I'm reading this. Failure, think about it. Close your eyes, stand up, chest up, shoulders back, chin up, eyes closed. Failure, matter of fact, bow your head and close your eyes in submission. Failure, hear the music, the Star Spangled Banner is playing. Star Spangled Banner or Lift Every Voice, whichever one you want to do, whichever one. Okay, here we go. Failure to educate young Americans about the whole story of Atlantic slave trade threatens to divide our nation and undermine our civic unity and belief in the historical legitimacy of our democratic institutions. The Anglo-Saxon, forever democratic. The history of the slave trade proves that virtually everyone participated and profited, whites and blacks, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Europeans, Africans, Americans, and Latin Americans. Why would they say whites and blacks and then they would name all the people who are supposedly white or black? See, it's deception. It's deception. It's deception. Oh, what a disgusting thing. A current college textbook co-authored by three African American, again, theoretical people, fake people that don't exist. Three African American historians, Europeans, and eventually Americans did not capture and enslave people themselves. Instead, they purchased slaves from African traders who restricted the Europeans to a few points on the coast, while the kingdoms raided the interior to supply the Europeans with slaves. The European traders provided the aggressors with firearms, but they did not instigate the wars. They give no sources. They don't tell you who the people are who's saying this. Again, it's just words on paper. Huh? Words on paper. That's it. And we still don't have any dates. Only by facing the whole truth, because they why they not saying, oh, during this time it was 1726 or it was 1639. When this happened, it was 1804. We're apologizing for what our people did in 1773. Only by facing the whole truth can we free ourselves from the burden of our shared tragic past and reinvigorate our commitment to what Amistad America rightly calls our collective history and future. See, they want to reinvigorate it. They want to keep the lie alive. They want to keep the lie alive, and they want to fight on that lie. We can then join hands. Oh, we can join hands. Oh, my God. Join hands. And they want to join hands. What's the song? We are the world. We are the blah, blah, blah. We can then join hands and affirm together in the words of the African American spiritual. Oh my God. Free at last. Free at last. Thank God Almighty. We are free at last. I am somebody. Okay, here we go. Atlantic Worlds, Enslavement and Resistance. The history of the transatlantic slave trade. This is maritime history. Ivory, gold, and other trade resources attracted Europeans to West Africa. As demand for cheap labor to work on plantations in America grew, people enslaved in West Africa became the most valuable commodity for European traders. Slavery existed in Africa before Europeans arrived. However, their demand for slave labor was so great that traders and their agents searched far inland, devastating the region. Powerful African leaders fueled the practice by exchanging enslaved people for goods such as alcohol, beads, and cloth. Britain became the world's leading slave trading country. Transatlantic slave trade was especially lucrative because ships could sail with full holds on every stage of their voyage, making large profits for merchants in London, Bristol, and Liverpool. Transatlantic slave trade was especially lucrative because ships could sail with full holds. Sailboats, right? No dates. Let's see if we can get a date. Around 12 million Africans were enslaved in the course of the transatlantic slave trade between 1640 and 1807. It's funny that the same amount of Anglo-Saxons came through Ellis Island or came over here from Europe to start a new life in the new world. Same amount, 12 million, 13 million, right? Through Ellis Island, right? And they came here with $5. My grandfather came here with $5 in his pocket and opened a chain of restaurants. But you Americans can't pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Y'all always begging. British ships transported about 3.4 million Africans across the Atlantic. The Middle Passage was the harrowing voyage experienced by the millions of African captives transported across the Atlantic in European ships to work as slaves in the Americas. By the 16th century, the 1500s. By the 16th century, 1500s, Europeans had started to develop and cultivate regions in the Caribbean, North and South America. So in the 1500s, Europeans had started to develop and cultivate regions in the Caribbean, North and South America. As demand for labor grew, Europeans turned to West Africa to supply an enslaved workforce. See, they're giving you it's so much stuff that happened. See, they say the 16th century. By the 16th century, this is the 1500s. This is 100 years they're speaking of, roughly. In this 100 years, they talking about they came here, they cultivating regions in the Caribbean, North and South America. The Caribbean, North and South America. You know who they had to deal with? Take a guess. Let me ask you a question. When they say they cultivated regions in the Caribbean, North and South America, do you know who they was dealing with during this cultivation? You know how they always talking about niggas causing problems, or niggas is a problem and always have been? Yeah, that's who they had to deal with. That's after the niggas figured out that these people was bogus, that they was manipulative, disgusting, despicable, sodomite, pedophile, demonic, cannibalistic, criminal. These people, it say, as demand for labor grew, they didn't skip 1,000 years. As demand for labor grew, Europeans turned to West Africa to supply an enslaved workforce. These people were defined in the law as chattels, the personal property of their owners, and were denied the right to live and move as they chose. Nearly 2/3 of all enslaved people cut cane on sugar plantations. These were places of hard labor and cruel treatment with very high mortality rates. Despite this, Despite this, African music, here we go with the theoretical term African again. Where are we talking about? Why are you doing these people like that, making it seem like they don't have any identity, any specific identities, like they didn't call their people something, like grandmama didn't call her children something, and they learned from their mama and their daddy who they was. Why you acting like that? Despite this, African music, dance, and religious ceremonies flourished, evolving into new hybrid cultures and traditions. First of all, the only religion that flourished was Christianity. Okay? Is that African? And then they say African music, dance, and religious. So let's not even get into that. Enslaved people fought to retain their families, cultures, customs, and dignity. Resistance took many forms, from keeping aspects of their identity and traditions alive to escaping and plotting uprisings. On the plantations, they broke tools, damaged crops, and feigned injury or illness in order to frustrate plantation owners. The mighty plantation owner, the mighty pink man. The mighty old peoples, as I call them, the old peoples, the Anglo-Saxons, the people who you term as white, the creatures. The Africans broke tools, damaged crops, and feigned injury or illness in order to frustrate the mighty plantation owners whose skin was percolating in that Georgia sun, in that Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky. They skin was percolating in that sun. But they most powerful people. You got a plantation owner, you got his wife, you got their young child, and you got 50 niggas outside. And they bowing down to these people, to these old peoples. At other times, they made bids for freedom by escaping. Sometimes these runaways grouped together and built their own independent, self-sufficient communities of resistance, often known as Maroons. Call them anything. Call them anything. Don't get caught up in these names that people been giving you. Okay? Because you have to understand one thing. Let's go back. Understand one thing. These people didn't speak the same language as your people. And I'm not talking about no Cherokee language. I'm not talking about none of these languages that they tell you the American Indians of antiquity spoke. These different languages, the Cherokee language, the Choctaw language, the Chickasaw language, and all this other type of stuff. You see these words from these languages and all this, it'd be super confusing. These words don't even, you can't even make out these words. Who wrote these words? Who was writing? A lot of our people, it said, didn't read and write, but they understood English. The thing is they didn't read and write, but the people who came here understood a little bit of what your people was saying. And guess what? The stuff that your people was saying, the names that your people was telling them was they name. These old people / Anglo-Saxons / people you term as white people was doing the best they could to understand them and write down what they was saying. Because your people had never wrote down they name before. They never read their name on no piece of paper. They was their name. They was who they was. Large-scale organized uprisings were a common reaction to the cruelties of the slave system. Potential and actual armed resistance also contributed to the ending of the slave trade and eventually slavery itself. Slave trading began in Elizabeth I's reign. She lent royal ships to the two slaving expeditions of John Hawkins, the first English trader of enslaved people from West Africa to the Americas. The growth of the Atlantic economy brought further demands for African labor. This increased the scale of the trade in enslaved people. In the first third of the 18th century, we're getting some dates here now. Some we can mess with. This increased the scale of the trade in enslaved people. In the first third of the 18th century, the 1700s, Britain's involvement in the slave trade. See, if you knew who your people was and where your people was in the 1700s, then you will be able to see where they are in the story and tell if this is complete bullshit. You know? All right? Britain's involvement in the slave trade grew enormously. In the 1710s and 1720s, nearly 200,000 enslaved Africans were transported across the Atlantic in British ships. Right? Parliament finally passed an act to abolish the slave trade in 1807. Now we at abolishment. It stated that all slave trading by British subjects was utterly abolished, prohibited, and declared to be unlawful. Although the British Parliament outlawed slavery in 1807, a quarter of all Africans who were enslaved were transported across the Atlantic after this date. A quarter after this date. A quarter of the 12 million that they mentioned earlier came after 1807. Okay. We was talking about slavery. 1600s, 1500s to 1807. We just left at 1807. They abolished it, right? Let's go back up and see. 1807, a quarter of all Africans who were enslaved were transported across the Atlantic after this date. Although the British Parliament outlawed slavery in 1807, let's see what's happening around this time in America. The Pennsylvania Gazette newspaper, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1760, Thursday, August 28th, 1760. It blows my mind that it's a newspaper in 1760. It really do. I ain't gonna lie to you. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, August 28th, 1760. 20 pounds reward. Runaway on the 28th of July. Last, from the subscriber, living in Alexandria, Fairfax County, Virginia, a convict servant man named John Murphy, born in Ireland, about 28 years of age, by trade a joiner. A low, well-set fellow about 5'4" high. It's a struts in his walk. Oh, the nigga was pimping. He was pimping. Has a pale complexion, large black beard and eye brown, wide mouth and pleasant countenance. Sings extraordinarily well, having followed it in the playhouses in London. Talks proper English, and that in a polite manner. His apparel not all known by me, but had a fine hat, almost new. Good wig. Good wig. Is they talking about his hat, or did he actually have on a wig? And linen, both coarse and fine. 2 brown cloth jacket with and without sleeves. New black knit breeches. Also, good buckskin. What is it? Good buckskin. I can't read that. Fine white cotton stockings and others, brass buckles, and good shoes. I believe he has what does that say? A musical grammar. The owner's name wrote in it Richard Rigg. Likewise, I am informed, had a quantity of dollars, and likely to be base metal, as he seems experienced in coining. So this guy's from Ireland, born in Ireland, and he has a quantity of dollars and likely to be base metal, as he seems experienced in coining. It is imagined he has forged a pass and likely will deny his name, trade, and place of nativity. Whoever secures the said convict in any goal, so as his master may have him again, shall have the above reward, and if brought home, reasonable charges paid by John Patterson. This is 1760. This is during the same time where they were bringing those portions of those 12 million Africans from Africa in order to work for somebody. But this is 20-pound reward for a runaway Irishman in Fairfax County, Virginia. Let's move on. We just saying what was popping around this time. Maryland Gazette newspaper, Annapolis, Maryland, Thursday, August 9th, 1753. In the afternoon, a Negro boy was detected picking a man's pocket at the vendor under the courthouse. Listen, it's no such thing as a Negro boy. What was this boy? He was an American Indian, reclassified as a Negro. Remember? 1753. Now, when was the Irishman on the run? When did the Irishman say, I ain't working for you no more? 1760. Okay, so this seven years after Shorty was pickpocketing somebody. Okay, this in Maryland right here. 1753. In the afternoon, a Negro boy, an American Indian boy. Now, don't get me wrong. I say American Indian, but I don't know specifically where his people are from. It says Maryland. It's the Maryland Gazette. I don't know if this was in Maryland. The Maryland just may have picked up the story, someone from this particular newspaper. But the boy, I don't know what his people called themselves, and I don't know what the Negro boy or the American Indian boy's name was, because American Indian, again, is a broad term. In the afternoon, but I'm just trying to let you know what was popping, what was happening around this time, 1753, around the time when the 12.5 or the 12 million people was kidnapped from Africa and brought here to work, brought to the 13 colonies. You think they wanted all of them? You think they wanted 12 million, 100 million Africans in the 13 colonies to overpower the old peoples that was there? And by old peoples, I mean Anglo-Saxons, or the people you term as white. In the afternoon, this is Maryland Gazette newspaper, 1753. In the afternoon, a Negro boy, an American Indian boy, was detected picking a man's pocket at the vendue. At the vendue. The vendue is the venue under the courthouse. A shorty is picking pockets under the courthouse. Man, niggas ain't gonna never change, man. Niggas ain't change. I'm telling you. I don't know why y'all thought y'all ancestors was punks. Cause they wasn't. They was not. Let's keep going. Maryland Gazette, Annapolis, Maryland, Thursday, August 9th, 1753. Maryland, 1753. Ran away from the Baltimore Iron Works last night. A convict servant man belonging to Charles Carroll. It says Big and Company or something and company name Thomas. What is that? Bus? But may change his name, is an Englishman of middle stature, has a brown complexion. An Englishman of middle stature has a brown complexion, about 40 years of age or more, has many wrinkles in his face, a high nose, pretty forward in talking, has been in the country about 2 years, and served some time at Pipe Creek and what does it say? Monarchies? Something. I can't read that. He has been used to go by water. He has been used to go by water. Oh, he hang around the water. Had on when he went away, and on a Briggs shirt. I don't know. He got some type of designer shirt on, name brand shirt on. He got some trousers, a hat, country shoes, it say. I wonder what those look like. And an old brown curly gray coat, but very probably has furnished himself with better clothes and had money. Englishman of middle stature with a brown complexion. He ran away. It don't say he a runaway. It say he ran away from Baltimore Iron Works. He left. He quit. That's it. I'm gone. Maryland Gazette newspaper, 1753, Thursday, August 9th, ran away from the subscriber. Living in Baltimore County on the 8th of July last, a servant man named Darby Mahensi. It's a lusty, likely Irishman. A lusty, likely Irishman. And lusty, I believe lusty means like a strong person, a stand up type of person. A lusty, likely Irishman is of a fair complexion, has several scars on his back, occasioned by whipping. As he This is an Irishman, a likely Irishman, a stand up dude, a strong dude, is of a fair complexion, has several scars on his back occasioned by whipping, as he has always been a notorious rogue and thief. He had on and with him blue cloth breeches, some blue pants, a black knit jacket without sleeves, a plaid jacket, yarn and thread stockings, a country cloth jacket, a white shirt. It's a Offna Briggs trousers, Offna Briggs shirt, and a pair of pumps. Nigga got pumps on, and he got name brand clothes on. He got designer clothes on. He has with him a small, wait, a small pert woman whom he says is his wife. Because she probably is. I mean, that's his woman. She pretends to tell fortunes, has a red petticoat, a calico gown, a black hat, and a pair of pumps. Whoever apprehends the said Darby Mahoney and brings him to his master shall have 40 shillings reward if taken in this province, and if taken out of this province, £3. Charles Wrigley. Now remember, this is a Irishman of fair complexion who ran away. 1753. Maryland Gazette newspaper, Thursday, August 5th, 1753. At the same time and place will be exposed to public sale a very likely country-born Negro girl and several other Negro boys and girls, or properly 1753, remember. At the same time and place will be exposed to public sale a very likely country born from the South, American Indian girl, and several other American Indian boys and girls. So they are kidnapping children. Can you say child trafficking? This is no joke, okay? Same as it ever was. Ain't nothing changed. Yeah, they used to have children on the back of milk cartons, okay? They don't even do that no more. Been stealing children. Maryland Gazette, Annapolis, Maryland newspaper, Thursday, August 9th, 1753. Ran away from the subscriber. Living at Nottingham, a servant man named John Weldon, of a middle stature, is an Irishman. Above 21 years of age, has black hair. By trade, a weaver, and is a pretty good scholar. He went away from the mouth of Patuxent River in a coarse sailor's dress. Whoever will bring the said servant to the subscriber shall have two pistoles reward paid by Abram Wood. Pistoles. They'll give him two pistoles, which is, I believe, a form of currency. Let's move on. This stuff is very difficult to read. It's the Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1754, Thursday, June 13th, 1754. The Pennsylvania Gazette newspaper runaway is Monday the 10th. So base ship, London captain, Shirley commander, an English servant man named William Hookley, by trade a lawyer, or it says a sawyer, Is that a lawyer or a sawyer? About 35 years of age, 5 foot, 5 feet 6 inches high, much marked with the smallpox. And scarred under his chin and about his mouth. Has on, when he went away, an old blue flannel. So it's an English servant, 1754, an English servant runaway. Remember, this is during a time where we have 12 million to 100 million Africans being stolen so that they can come work. The Pennsylvania Gazette newspaper, Thursday, June 13th, 1754, runaway on the 19th from the subscriber near Talbot County Court in Maryland. An English convict servant man named Joseph Holmes, 31 years of age, of middle size, and has a down look. Had on, when he went away, a whitish coat, new felt hat, old shirt, trousers, stockings. Okay. 1754, we have in Maryland, an English convict servant man who has run away. He done. Pennsylvania Gazette newspaper, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1754, runaway on the 1st of June at night from John Letley of Bristol Township, Philadelphia. A servant man named Conrad Hendrick Earns, born in Hanover, about 45 years of age, had on, when he went away, a black jockey cap, blue coat, a figured something, a blue coat jacket, and two linsey woolsey jackets, one filled with dark olive colored filling with pewter buttons, and the other with red and white filling, streaked without something to wear under the other clothes with brass buttons. Okay. It says 2 pair of yarn stockings, 1 pair light blue with tops sewed to them, and the other black and white like Negroes' stockings. Okay. It says broad-toed shoes down at the heels. He cannot speak any English. He professes to be a doctor and has cupping boxes of. He professes to be a doctor. Okay. Let me see. Okay, let's move on. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're just seeing what's going on in America. I mean, we do have millions and millions and millions and thousands of slave voyages and millions of kidnapped Africans coming here every single year to help in the sugar plantations and the tobacco plant foundations, the Newport Foundation, the Newport plantations, making them squares. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, July. No, it's organic tobacco, and if you know When you smoke organic tobacco, from my experience, it seems medicinal. Thursday, June 13th, 1754, the Pennsylvania Gazette, to be sold by Reed and Furman in Trenton. This is Philadelphia Gazette newspaper. To be sold by Reed and Furman in Trenton. A likely healthy Negro man, about 24 years of age, has been brought up to country business, and purchaser may have a reasonable time for payment. Now, don't forget, American Indians were called Negroes. They was also called niggers. You understand? So don't get confused. There's no such thing as a Negro. Okay? Yo, 16 second greats and 32 third grade grandparents was not calling themselves no Negro. Your 64 fourth grade grandparents was not calling themselves Negroes. Healthy Negro man about 24 years of age has been brought up to country business. The purchaser may have a reasonable time for payment. Also to be sold by William Douglas about 4 miles from Allenstown. 2 likely young Negro men who have been brought up to country business. And a Dutch servant girl's time, who has about 4 years and a half to serve. Any person inclining to buy any of the above mentioned servants may know the terms by applying to either of the owners. Can you say temp service? Y'all know anything about temp service? The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, June 13th, 1754. Lancaster, April 19th, 1754. This day was committed to the goal of this country. On suspicion of being a runaway servant, Edward Dunfield, an Irishman, about 25 years of age, pale complexion and middle stature, he says he came from the Jerseys. And on Wednesday following, Daniel Foley, an Irishman, can speak good Dutch, of a swarthy complexion or a black complexion, swarthy complexion or black complexion, and middle stature. He says, listen, he's an Irishman. Daniel Foley, an Irishman, can speak good Dutch, of a black complexion and middle stature. He says he served his time with Adam Hamfer near the White House in Chester County. These are to desire anyone that has any demands against either of them to appear before the 30th of June next. Otherwise, they will be discharged on paying their fees by John Clark, goalkeeper. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, June 13th, 1754. This is during the time where millions and millions and millions of Africans are said to be stolen and brought here to work, as if these people don't seem to have their hands full. Philadelphia, May 21st, 1754, runaway on Sunday night last from Daniel Goodman of this city. An English servant man named John Bridle, a baker by trade, about 40 years of age, very much pockbroken, has a scar in his forehead and several others about his head. Is a very fore and jacket. Okay. Okay. Runaway on Sunday night last from Daniel Goodman of this city. Baker, An English servant man named John Bridle, a baker by trade, a Englishman, runaway, 1753. Pennsylvania Gazette, 1754. I'm sorry, the previous one was 1754 as well. Thursday, June 13th, runaway from John Scott. Morris County, East New Jersey, an Irish servant man named James Murphy, of middle stature, somewhat long visaged, sharp nose, much pitted with the smallpox, gray or light colored eyes, flaxen hair, reddish beard, about 28 years of age. So we're dealing with an Irishman who ran away, an Irish servant. Ran away from from East New Jersey. Okay, 1754. The Pennsylvania Gazette newspaper, Thursday, June 13th, 1754. £4 reward, runaway on the 18th of January last from John Ladd of Gloucester County, in New Jersey, a servant man named John Armis, or Huckaback. His name Huckaback or Hucklebuck. No, it's Huckaback. A servant man named John Armis or Huckaback of middle size, pale complexion, blind of one eye, it being sunk in his head, about 28 years of age. Okay. It said he can speak Dutch, but appears to be this country born, has lived several years with Thomas Roberts. Okay. Pale complexion, New Jersey. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, December 18th, 1755. 1755, a year later, to be sold, a Negro woman about 22 years old with two of her children, a boy and a girl. The boy is about 9 months old and the girl 3 years and 2 months. The woman understands housework and can cook well. For further particulars, inquire at the new printing office. To be sold, a Negro woman. Again, can you say temp service? It sounds like this woman is seeking out work. A Negro woman or an American Indian woman, about 22 years old with two of her children, a boy and a girl. The boy is about 9 months old and the girl 3 years and 2 months. The woman understands housework and can cook well. Who made this? Who put this in the newspaper? Do you know? This is a woman, 22 years old with two of her children. Who put this ad in the newspaper? Was it a family member of hers? You think it was a slave master, right? I'm just saying, I don't know if it was or wasn't. I'm just saying, why do you assume that? If you assume that. The Philadelphia Gazette newspaper, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, December 18th, 1755. Philadelphia, December 18th, 1755. Runaway from Thomas Anstrom of the township of Springfield in Burlington County, New Jersey, on about the 6th instant. An Irish servant man named David Keene, A short, well-set man with black curled hair has a fresh complexion, about 20 years of age, and is a likely man. Had on when he went away a homespun worsted coat, bluish colored striped jacket, double breasted without sleeves, leather breeches, leather apron, shoes and stockings, a good hat, and speckled shirt. Whoever secures said servant, so as his master may have him again, shall have 30 shillings reward paid by Thomas Antrim. They need that work. They need that work. Now, why do they need work? I mean, there's millions of Africans coming. Can't you wait a little while? I'm pretty sure the next shipment of prime Africans is going to be here soon, right? Maybe not. Maryland Gazette newspaper, Annapolis, Maryland, Thursday, April 1st, April Fool's Day, 1756, to be sold for bills of exchange or sterling money. A tract of land containing 190 acres, lying on the south side of Magatbe River, situated very pleasant and convenient for fishing and fowling, and within 5 miles of Annapolis, wherein is a good dwelling house, kitchen, meat house, a negro quarter, 2 corn houses, a garden well paled in, and 2 orchards. Also, a young Negro wench, a Negro girl, and a Negro boy, for terms apply to the printer hereof. So they selling the land, and you will be provided with help from the young Negro woman or the young American Indian woman, a young American Indian girl, and a young American Indian boy. Listen, this don't sound like no gruesome shit right here. Do this sound gruesome to you? What do you think about this? Maryland Gazette newspaper, Annapolis, Maryland, Thursday, April 1st, 1756, March 23rd, 1756, ran away from the Baltimore Iron Works on Patapsco in Maryland on Saturday night. Last, an Irish servant man named Thomas Ivory, he is about 27 years of age, pretends to be a marble cutter by trade, was imported about 2 years ago into Patapsco River, is about 5 feet 6 inches high, slender and smooth faced, has sandy hair, and speaks pretty much on the brogue. Had on when he went away an old felt hat, a red worsted cap, old brown coat, cotton jacket, and breeches trimmed with leather buttons. 2 Osnabrigs. There are those Osnabrig shirts again. That's a name brand. Coarse country shoes and stockings. He has stolen an indenture with a discharge on it belonging to one James Moore, who was born in the Jerseys, and no doubt will endeavor to pass by it. Whoever takes up said servant and secures him, so he may be had again, shall have 30 shillings reward if taken 20 miles from home, 40 shillings if taken 40 miles from home, £3 if taken a greater distance, if taken out of province, 3 pistoles, and reasonable charges if brought home, paid by Richard Croyle. What does this say to you? This says that the people who employed these people really need them, and they can't survive without them. Does this sound familiar? Huh? How many companies really need their employees today? Let's shake it. The Pennsylvania Gazette newspaper, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, February 19th, 1956. Northampton, February 5th, 1956. This day was committed to this jail one James Sturd, a Negro man or Indian man, on suspicion of being a runaway. Suspicion of being a runaway, they locked him up. Same bogus charges they put on another day. He says that he worked with one John Palmer, a bricklayer in Philadelphia, about a year ago. And sometime before that, he worked on Chester with Joseph Parker. It's like he has to convince them that he worked before, that he had a job. Again, does this sound familiar? You have to produce your papers when you get pulled over. This is to define anyone that has any claim to the said Negro to come or send for him in 4 weeks after the date of this advertisement. Otherwise, he will be sold for his prison fees. By John Weaver Goler. Okay. The Pennsylvania Journal or Weekly Advertiser, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania newspaper, Thursday, September 9th, 1756. Wanted. Now it says wanted. That don't mean that these people is criminals. Okay? It says wanted. It's the same thing as today, except today it says help wanted. A journeyman baker who can make gingerbread. A lad aged about 13 years or upward to be an apprentice to a saddler in this city. A Negro boy of about 14 years of age to be hired for 7 years. A Negro boy of about 15 or about 16 or 17 years of age. He must be likely healthy and have had the smallpox. To be bought. When they say to be bought, they mean to be hired. Not saying that they won't take advantage of the people who they hire, because a lot of times they will. Have you been taken advantage of? Do you know of people who have been hired and taken advantage of, or taken advantage of from the start? Several women. Listen, this is the wanted section. This is the help wanted section. This is the classifieds. Several women servants for middling places who understand their work and can bring good character. A boy to go of errands who can read and write High Dutch and knows the town. A person well versed in the French language often offers his service to teach it. A healthy, sober woman who has a good breast of milk, lives about 10 miles from Philadelphia, offers to nurse a child. A healthy, sober woman who has a good breast of milk, lives about 10 miles from Philadelphia, offers to nurse a child. They are advertising. They have a help wanted ad for the breast of a woman to nurse their child. A woman servant who has lived in none but families of repute offers herself as an upper servant. A Dutch healthy girl, 13 or 14 years. Wait. A healthy, sober woman who has a good breast of milk, lives about 10 miles from Philadelphia, offers to nurture a child. Oh, this is the woman who's offering to nurture a child, to nurse children. She's saying that she has that she's, she's full of milk. She's full of milk. She's ready to nurse children. If for some reason the woman who gives birth to the children can't do it. A Dutch healthy girl, 13 or 14 years of age, 5 years and a half of her time to be disposed of. A Negro man in good health, about 24 or 25 years, An Irish girl of 19 years of age, 4 years of her time. Several horses to be sold. For particulars, please to inquire at the Public General Register Office. Maryland Gazette, Annapolis, Maryland, Thursday, September 23rd, 1756. Remember, we are in the 1700s, 1750s, specifically 1756. The first settlements they made where they found any inhabitants was the upper fort up on Delaware River in New Jersey, called Cole's Fort, and from thence they were seat under a guard to Elizabethtown for fear the white people should annoy them, they looking more like Indians than Christians, being very swarthy or very black or very dark, and their hair cut by the savages after the Indian fashion, and dressed only in Indian blankets. Springer says that he was taken prisoner the 22nd day of May last, when being at work at one Anthony Swartwout's in Suffolk County, New Jersey, about 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 Indians attacked the house and shot Swartwout's wife dead up on the spot. Indians always been messing with them guns. They then seized Swartwout and Springer, and 3 of the Indians drove Springer away with the Negro who they had taken the night before at one Captain Hunt's in said county, making them run all the way until they came to the river Delaware, which they crossed on a raft of rails about 8 miles above Colonel Van Campen's. When they were got about 1.5 miles into Pennsylvania, they waited in the bushes for 2 Indians who were left behind, the Swartwout and his children. And in about 1.5 hours, the said Indians came to them with only 2 of Swartwout's children, a girl about 12 years old and a boy about 9. These children told Springer that the Indians had killed 3 of the children at the house, and had killed and scalped their father about 7 miles from the house near a brook, where they likewise killed their little sister and threw her into the brook. The Indians then carried Springer Swartwout, 2 children, and the Negro to the Indian town, where they were dispersed about. Hunt's Negro told Springer that young Hunt, brother to Captain Hunt, who was also taken prisoner with him, was killed by the Indians, endeavoring to make his escape from them. This is the first intelligence we have had of Swartwout and his children, and of young Hunt and the Negro, since they were missing in May last, when Captain Hunt's house was burnt to the ground. It seems in this story, in this article, in this story, that the Negro is the Indian who is in cooperation with the Anglo-Saxon or the foreigners. It seems that the Negro, they call the Indian the Negro, who is in cooperation, or, for lack of a better term, who's friends with the foreigner, who has adopted or accepted the foreigner's ways, or who associates even with the foreigner. Sherby says he was made prisoner at Waniata, Juniata in Pennsylvania by 6 Indians at the house of Daniel Williams in December last, when Williams himself was killed and Sherby and Williams' wife carried into captivity. Denite was taken prisoner. Denite was taken prisoner in the back parts of Maryland by 7 Indians in May last, as he and another were splitting rails, who were both carried into captivity. They were all 3 taken care of at Elizabethtown, and a collection was made for them to clothe them and to enable them to travel to their several places of abode. Maryland Gazette, Annapolis, Maryland, Thursday, September 23rd, 1756. Philadelphia. Okay. Since our last came to town, John Cox, a young lad who escaped from the Indians on the 14th of August last, and gives us the following information: that himself, his brother Richard, and John Craig were taken prisoners in the beginning of February last by 9 Delaware Indians from a plantation distant about 2 miles from McDowell's Mill, and carried to the Kittington or Kittatinning town on the Ohio. That on his way thither he met Shingus with a party of 30 men, and afterward Captain Jacobs with 15, who were going on a design to destroy the settlements in Canocoquig, that when he arrived at Kittatinning, he saw there about 100 fighting men of the Delaware tribe with their families, and about 50 English prisoners, consisting of men, women, and children. That during his stay there, Shingus and Jacob's parties returned, the one with 9 scalps and 10 prisoners, the others with several scalps and 5 prisoners, and that another company of 18 came from Cuyahoga with 17 scalps fixed on a pole, and carried them to Fort Duquesne to obtain their reward. So they get rewarded for scalps. That the warriors, which are just men, held a council, which with their war dances continued a week, after which Captain Jacobs went off with a party of 48 men, intending, as he was told, to fall upon the inhabitants of Paxton. That the Indians frequently said they were resolved to kill all the white folks, except the few with whom they would afterwards make a peace. That they made an example of our Paul Bradley, whom they, agreeable to their usual cruelty, beat for half an hour with clubs and tomahawks, and afterwards, fastening him to a post, cropped his ears close to his head, after which an Indian chopped off his fingers, and another, with a red hot iron, burnt him all over the belly in such a barbarous manner that occasioned a smoke, by which the prisoner, who with the other white people they obliged to be witnesses of their horrid barbarity, could hardly see him. That then they shot him full of arrows, and at last killed and scalped him, and made the prisoners burn his body. He likewise says further that about the beginning of March he was taken by 3 Indians to Cuyahoga, where he found about 50 warriors belonging to the Delaware Mohican, the Minsha tribe, and about 20 German prisoners. That while he was there, the Indians frequently went in parties of 12 to destroy the inhabitants, and as often returned with their scalps, but no prisoners. That their whole conversation was continually filled with expressions of vengeance against the English and resolutions to kill them and lay waste their country. That in May, all the Indians removed from Cuyahoga about 25 miles higher up the river to plant corn, where most of them have since lived. The South Carolina Gazette newspaper, Charleston, South Carolina, Thursday, July 8th, 1756. I don't have to tell y'all. Y'all remember. Again, I'm gonna go and say it again. We're in the times where there are millions of Africans being kidnapped supposedly and brought here every year by the sailboat load so that they can work. Right? This is what you're told. But look what's happening in America during this time. And when I say this is what's happening in America, this is what's happening in the few places that's documented in America, okay? It's so much more happening, and guess what? Most of the people is minding their business. And they not getting wrote about, whether you want to think they are or not. This is not the time when everybody got their phone and they recording everything they do at every second of the day. This is not that time. People minding their business. They living their life. When you hear about these stories are few and far between. The South Carolina Gazette, Charleston, South Carolina, Thursday, June 8th, 1756. Check this out. Runaway from the subscriber on the 10th of last month, a premise lad named, what's his name? Paul Floyd. Paul Floyd, about 19 years old, then thin-visaged, very much pock-broken, and has a considerable long, I'm not sure what that is, had, or when he went away, a light blue coat, black washcoat, striped shirt, and cannabrog trousers. Whoever takes him up and brings him to me in Charlestown or to the workhouse shall be rewarded according to law. But whoever harbors or entertains him will be prosecuted to the utmost severity of the law. Now we're speaking about a premise. I'm not sure what that means. Premise lad named Paul Floyd, about 19 years old. But more importantly, they're saying that a runaway, a premise lad about 19, look to the left of the R in the word run. This is a picture so that whomever reads this will have a visual aid in who they're actually looking for or what type of human they're looking for now. What do we see? We see a nigga with a feathered crown and a feathered kilt, right? This is the South Carolina Gazette, Charleston, South Carolina, 1756. Who wears a feather crown and a feather kilt? American Indians do. And I bet if this picture was more detailed, you would probably see a hoop earring. And we all know who wear those. But do you see that? Huh? You see that? That's an American Indian right there. That's the runaway. South Carolina. But more importantly, that is a dark-skinned American Indian that cannot be mistaken for a Native American. This ain't that, right? I wish we could see this closer. I wish we could, the feather crown and the feather kilt. Let's see if we can get a more detailed illustration of what this would actually look like up close. How about this? This is an emblem of America. And what do we see? Look at the two American Indians with the feather crown and the feather kilt. Look at that. Pay attention. An emblem. Here we go. An emblem of America. You can read it right there. These are two American Indians with the feather crown and the feather kilt around their waist. Of course, you see they have the tomahawk or the battle axe or whatever, and the bow and the quiver of arrows as usual. And you can see who they are. They're people they're some of your people from your bloodlines, your generations of people. Now let's go back up. Look at that. Look at that. I know the picture is damn near you don't really know what the picture is, but you know what it is. You can see, on these runaway slave pictures, you used to seeing the Negro or the American Indian with his like backpack, looking downtrodden, looking like he running away. You know what I mean? Looking like he shuffling along and whatnot. But let's go down. Look at that. Look at that. You see that? I know it's not detailed, but you see that feather headdress runaway from subscriber, South Carolina. Then we go down and we see an emblem of America. Same thing. Okay. The South Carolina Gazette newspaper, Charleston, South Carolina, Thursday, July 8th, 1756. McCarlin and Campbell continue to sell all sorts of Indian trading and other goods, usually imported from the province. They take in payment deer and beaver skins. They take in payment deer and beaver skins, rice, Georgia currency, and will purchase any quantity of deer and beaver skins with cash. The South Carolina Gazette newspaper, Charleston, South Carolina, Thursday, July 8th, 1756. Two Negro men or two American Indian men named Jimmy and I can't read that name. Jimmy and something else say they belong to one Mr. Smith. Have in what does this say? Two Negro men named Jimmy and Dundro, Dendo, something. Say they belong to one Mr. Smith. Having white Negro cloth jackets. Oh, they have on white Negro cloth jackets and Olabrug trousers and were taken up at the something. Listen to this. They have on white Negro cloth jackets. What is Negro cloth? What is American Indian cloth? It's a two American Indian men. And then it says they have on white American Indian cloth. Of course, they say Negro, but it's American Indian cloth jackets. White Negro cloth jackets. It's 1756. You mean to tell me they was kidnapped from Africa? And now they come over here and they done associated cloth jackets with these people? No, we're not even going to talk about that no more because it is no debate. There is no debate. They have on Negro cloth jackets. Okay. June 19th. That was June 25th. June 29th. Wait a minute. It says a new Negro boy and a new Negro girl. The boy has on an old yellow jacket and the girl an old striped coat and jacket, taken up on Frat's Point. June 30th, two new Negro wenches with marks on each side of their temple and blue beads about their necks have on white Negro cloth jackets and coats and were taken up in town. The South Carolina Gazette, Charleston, South Carolina newspaper, Thursday, July 8th, 1756. An able Negro man aged about 20 years who has been some time in coasting schooners to be sold. Inquire of the printer. Maryland Gazette, Annapolis, Maryland newspaper, Thursday, September 30th, 1756. A town of our Indian enemies on the Ohio, about 25 miles about Fort Duquesne or Fort Duquesne. On the 3rd instant, he joined the advance party at the Beaver Dam near Frankstown. And on the 7th in the evening, being within 6 miles of Kittening, the scouts discovered a fire in the road and reported that there were but 3 or at most 4 Indians at it. It was not thought proper to attempt surprising those Indians at that time, lest if one should escape the town might be alarmed. So Lieutenant Hogg, with 12 men, was left to watch them, with orders not to fall upon them till daybreak. And our forces turned out of the path to pass by their fire without disturbing them. About 3 a.m, having been guided by the whooping of the Indian warriors at a dance in the town. They reached the river, 100 perches below the body of the town, near a cornfield, in which a number of the enemy lodged out of their cabins, as it was a warm night. As soon as day appeared and the town could be seen, the attack began in the cornfield, through which our people charged, killing several of the enemy, and entered the town. Captain Jacob, chief of the, hold on, entered the town. Captain Jacobs, chief of the Indians, gave the war whoop and defended his house bravely through loopholes in the logs. And the Indians generally refusing quarters which were offered them, declaring they were men and would not be prisoners. Colonel Armstrong, who now received a wound in his shoulder by a musket ball, ordered their houses to be set on fire over their heads, which was immediately done by the officers and soldiers with great activity. When the Indians were told they would be burnt if they did not surrender, one of them replied he did not care, as he could kill 4 or 5 before he died. And as the heat approached, some began to sing. Some, however, burnt out of the houses, also attempted to reach the river, but were instantly shot down. Captain Jacobs, in getting out of a window, Captain Jacobs was the chief. Remember, Captain Jacobs was the chief of these Indians, of these American Indians. In getting out of a window, was shot and scalped, as also his squaw and a lad called the King's Son. The Indians had a number of spare arms in their houses loaded, which went off in quick succession as the fire came to them. The quantities of gunpowder which had been stored in every house blew up from time to time, throwing some of their bodies a great height into the air. A body of the enemy on the opposite side of the river fired on our people, and being seen to cross the river at a distance as if to surround our men, they collected some Indian horses that were near the town to carry off the wounded, and then retreated without going back to the cornfield to pick up the scalps of those killed there in the beginning of the action. Several of the enemy were also killed in the river as they attempted to escape by fording it. And it was computed that in all between 30 and 40 were destroyed, though we brought off but 12 scalps. Maryland Gazette newspaper, Annapolis, Maryland, Thursday, September 30th, 1756. Maryland Gazette newspaper, 1756. 3 pistoles reward. See, pistoles is a form of currency, or a quantity of currency. 3 pistoles reward. Ran away from the subscriber living at West River in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. A servant man named John Barnes, born in London, has a small impediment in his speech, is a short, well-set fellow of a swarthy complexion, of a black complexion, had short black hair. He is a clockmaker by trade and has some of his tools with him. See. everyone who comes from Europe, everyone who came across the Atlantic was not an old peoples slash Anglo-Saxon slash what we term as white people. Or again, what I say is as old peoples. As you can see here, ran away from the subscriber living at West River in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. A servant man named John Barnes, born in London, has a small impediment in his speech, is a short, well-set fellow of a swarthy complexion. Swarthy meaning dark, or swarthy meaning black, which we know is no such thing as a black, but they mean dark brown. Perhaps. Had short black hair. He is a clockmaker by trade and has some of his tools with him. He had on, when he went away, a brown holland frock with a cap, a brownish drugget jacket, and breeches. He is much addicted to drink. Alky. He went away on a middle-sized gray horse branded KI. Whoever takes up the said servant and secures him in any goal, so that his master may get him again, shall have 2 pistoles reward, and 1 pistole for the horse, paid by Kinsey Johns. Catch him, you get you a pistole. Maryland Gazette, Annapolis, Maryland newspaper, Thursday, September 30th, 1756. Maryland Gazette newspaper, September 30th, 1756. Ran away last night from the subscriber in Annapolis, a convict servant man named David Yorith. He is a tall, lusty meaning, again, lusty means strong, muscular, strong, stand up motherfucker. He is a tall, lusty, ignorant country fellow, about 5'9" high, of a dark complexion, and wears his own black hair. He is a mason by trade, was born in Wales, is about 33 years old, and either can't or pretends not to speak good English. He had with him, when he went away, an old superfine blue broadcloth coat, turned down with a blue velvet cape, and a white flannel waistcoat with black glass buttons, and the edge is bound round with white tape. Though 'tis supposed he may have other clothes with him, as likewise both white and check shirts. Whoever secures the said servant and brings him to the subscriber in Annapolis shall receive 20 shillings reward, if taken within 10 miles of Annapolis, 40 shillings if above, and if taken out of the province, £5. Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania newspaper, April 15th, 1756. Runaway 3 weeks ago from Stephen Van Cortlandt of Second River in the Jerseys, a Dutch servant lad named John Christian Miller, a baker by trade, about 18 years of age, tall and slim, about 5 feet 10 inches high, of a ruddy complexion, and turns out his feet pretty much as he walks. So he's slew-footed. Had on, when he went away, a red duffel watch coat with brass buttons, and an old gray broadcloth coat with brass buttons, light cloth waistcoat, half-worn sheepskin breeches, gray woolen stockings, new shoes, got new shoes on, dark brown wig, half-worn beaver hat, pretty large brimmed. He speaks good English and reads it indifferently well. 'Tis supposed he went to Germantown and intends to embark for Hamburg, from whence he came. He may pass for a miller, being somewhat acquainted with that business. Whoever takes up and secures said servant, so as his master may have him again, shall have £3 reward paid by Stephen Van Cortlandt or Henry Schladorn in Philadelphia. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1756. This is during the time when millions and millions and millions of Africans were being stolen and brought here by thousands and thousands and thousands of voyages by sailboat to the Americas to work. Runaway on the 10th instant from Bernard Stroup of Northampton County in Salisbury Township near Bethlehem, a Dutch servant lad named Michael Sachs, 16 years of age, of a middle stature, light gray eyes, dark brown hair, much pock-marked about the nose, and pock-marked means, I guess the craters in your face, like those people who had craters in their face, bad skin or something like that. I don't know where it come from. I believe that's what pock-marked mean. Had on when he went away a striped linsey jacket. Again, he's a Dutch servant lad. Okay, this is 1756. Listen, 1756. If you got to go back and listen to the descriptions of these people who supposedly ran away again, go do so. 1756, the Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania newspaper, 1756, April 15th, 1756, runaway from the subscriber living in Middletown in East New Jersey. A Negro man named Cato, alias Toby, aged about 30 years, a lusty, well-set fellow, full-faced, had on when he went away. Okay. They're talking about what he had on. He was branded when a boy in Jamaica in the West Indies with B, and I think cause his left shoulder blade, with B and I think C on his left shoulder blade. He is a sly, artful fellow and deceives the credulous by pretending to tell fortunes, and pretends to be free, speaks English as well as if country born, and plays on the fiddle. It is thought he is gone toward the cedar swamps. Wow. He's from the West Indies. He's from the Americas. He is a West Indian. He is an American Indian. From the top of Canada to the bottom of Argentina and all the islands. American Indians. Let's shake it. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania newspaper, April 15th, 1756. Went away from Joseph Foster, living in Byberry Township, Philadelphia County, a Dutch servant girl named Maria Sophia, marked with the smallpox, a short body, about 17 years old. Okay. We ain't read about an African, right? Just making sure. Just making sure. The Pennsylvania Journal, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Journal or Weekly Advertiser newspaper, December 30th, 1756. William Bradford, price 2 shillings. Brief view of the conduct of Pennsylvania for the year 1755, so far as it affected the general service of the British colonies, particularly the expedition under the late General Braddock, with an account of the shocking inhumanities committed by the incursions of the Indians upon the province in October and November, which occasioned a body of the inhabitants to come down while the assembly were sitting, and to insist on an immediate suspension of all disputes and the passing of a law for the defense of the country. And remember, 1756, we are talking about the East Coast, we are talking about the Atlantic seaboard, the East Coast, the 13 colonies, okay? They are having problems. They got problems with the American Indians. And why wouldn't they? Okay, look in the middle. Is that a feather headdress and a feather kilt for a runaway Negro? Let's see. The South Carolina Gazette, Charleston, South Carolina, Thursday, October 13th, 1757. 1757. Where were your people in 1757? We've been on the East Coast. So your people in Alabama, minding their business. Mississippi, minding their business. Ohio, Illinois, Cali, minding their business. Texas, minding their business. Right? Runaway from the subscriber. A Negro woman named Kate, about 32 years old, of a yellowish complexion, a yellow bone. High yellow. Okay. A pouting look. It say all her upper 4 teeth gone and speaks good English. Formerly belonged to Mr. L. F. Cotton. Okay? Look at the picture of, they're saying it's a runaway. So they're giving you a visual aid of what type of human we're looking for. This is how this human looks. This is who this human is. This is an American Indian. Let's get a closer look. Let's get a closer look. I don't even want to read no more about this woman. Let's read a little bit more about this woman. Charlestown, and it's probably the will get into some of that Negro washing houses or kitchens to be employed in them, and say belongs to Mr. Villepateau aforesaid. She is 7 months gone with child, and carried with her her son Billy, a squat, well set boy about 13 years of age. A squat, well set boy about 13 years of age. And her daughter Alcy, a girl about 5 years old. This is South Carolina. with a mark in her forehead and another somewhere about her breast, occasioned by accidental burns and silver drops in her ears. She will no doubt change her dress, but had on when she went. Okay. Again, let's look at who they're looking for. Or, I mean, this is not specifically who this woman is, but they're telling you the kind of human they're looking for: an American Indian with a feather headdress or a feather crown and a feather kilt, for lack of a better term. And let's look closer. Okay, let's look at this. This is an emblem of America. And as we can see again, we see these images here. This is the same image on the runaway poster of American Indians with feather crowns and feather kilts, for lack of a better term. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, August 11th, 1757. Whereas Anne Greedy, wife of James Greedy and daughter of James Purtle of New London in Chester County, with 3 of their children, were carried off on the 2nd day of July last from York County by the Indians. The said James Purtle, for encouragement of such as go out scouting parties or otherwise against the Indians, will give the sum of 50 pounds currency to any person or persons who will bring back his said daughter Anne Greedy and her 3 children. Okay. Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, August 11th, 1757. Runaway, the 3rd of July last, from the subscriber living in Cecil County near New London. A servant woman named Jane Dagnon is middle-sized, of a swarthy complexion, has dark brown hair, splay feet, stoops as she walks, speaks pretty good English, and came in with Captain Falls last June from Ireland. 1757, Philadelphia Gazette. She came in from Ireland, and she is of a swarthy complexion. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, August 11th, 1757. Runaway on the 28th of July from the subscriber living in what is that? Susquehanna, something. Living in Chester, something like that. I'm not sure. An Irish servant man named James Casega, a down-looking fellow, speaks much on the brogue, has short black hair, which grows low on his forehead. So we're dealing with an Irish servant man, 1757, who has ran away. Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania newspaper, August 11th, 1757. Runaway from the subscriber, the 1st of January, 12 months past. A Negro man named Cato, who has since his elopement changed his name several times, had on, when he went away, a pair of buckskin breeches, fine brown linen shirt, a plain made whitish camelet coat, dark yarn stockings, new shoes, and a wool hat. Homie is fresh. It was time to go, man. It was time to go. He made a couple dollars. It was time to Bobby. It was time to get loose. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, August 11th, 1757. Runaway from the subscriber last night. A Welsh servant, man named John Williams, by trade a tailor, about 37 years of age, of a dark complexion. 1757, Welsh, dark complexion. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, August 11th, 1757. What does it say? Now sailing out, and will sail in 10 days for the protection of the trade of this province. The ship Pennsylvania frigate, John Sebald, commander, a fine vessel, about 9 months old, a prime sailor. Hear that? This is 1757. A prime sailor, a sailboat. This is just to let you know what's happening around this time, when millions and millions and millions of people are being stolen from Africa and forced to come to the Americas to work for free. This is letting you know what's happening here. There are already people working, and I mean, they fresh too. Welsh, Dutch, from London, Englishmen, and all that, Irishmen, and they fresh, and they making a couple dollars, and then they bouncing, right? They getting little. And not only is they getting little, the subscriber is putting an ad in the paper in the 13 colonies to try to get them back. But little do they know, them Irishmen and them Englishmen and them Dutch and all them people, guess what? The reason they left is because an American Indian or nigger got in their ear and told them, look, man, make you a couple dollars and you could come over here. I got this land over here. You could live in that little shack. You can live in that little house over there, the little shotgun house over there. You understand? And you don't have to deal with them people. A fine vessel about 9 months old and a prime sailor. This is a sailboat. 1757, and mounts 26 guns, 9 and 12 pounders to carry 150 men. Those inclined to enter on board said ship may see the articles at Mr. McIntyre's at the sign of the ship Pennsylvania, the corner of Pewter Platter Alley in Front Street. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, August 28th, 1760. Deserted from Presque Isle, from the 1st Battalion of the Pennsylvania Regiment, commanded by Colonel James Byrd, deserted from Presque Isle, from the 1st Battalion of the Pennsylvania Regiment, commanded by Colonel James Byrd. Front Street. Okay, let me see. Pennsylvania. I believe this is a continuation from that. Okay. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Thursday, August 28th, 1760. John Fox, a drought from Captain D. Hoss Company, 5'5" high, 21 years of age, brown complexion, long visage, a German, and served his time in Bucks County. Okay. He is brown complexion, 5'5" high, 21 years of age. Brown complexion, brown. You know what brown is. Stop acting like you don't know what brown is. Many times when we read these things, many times when we go over these things, people just can't believe what's right in front of their face, or what they're hearing, or what's right in front of their eyes. A lot of times people don't believe their own eyes. You're taught, you're you get pounded and pounded and pounded from a young age not to believe your senses, your natural senses. But it says here, brown complexion, long visage, a German. Okay. The Pennsylvania Gazette, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania newspaper, August 28th, 1760. Virginia, June 20th, 1760. Runaway from the subscriber in Amelia County in May 1759. A very likely Negro man named Dick, but used to call himself Richard Jenkins, about 30 years old, of a middle size, well set, very black, his back much scarred, is a good sawyer. He's a good sawyer. I don't know what that is. A sawyer as an occupation, and plays on the violin. Whoever conveys the said Negro to me shall have £10 reward. Virginia, August 8th, 1760. A likely well-made Virginia-born Negro fellow named Ned, alias Edward Kello, formerly belonging to Colonel Theodoric Band of Prince George County, and by him said to Mr. Richard Hanson of Petersburg, merchant, is about 5'8" high, near 40 years of age, sensible, smooth-tongued, talkative, and apt to deceive by telling plausible stories, has been bred up in a house, is a complete waiter, shaves and dresses a wig pretty well, had with him when he went away a great coat, Ozenbriggs shirts and breeches. I gotta look up this Ozenbriggs, man. There's something to the Ozenbriggs. This is some designer. Any person that will apprehend him and cause him to be conveyed to me or to Mr. William Eaton in Dinwiddie County shall receive £5 reward if taken in this government, if in any other £10 besides what the law allows. And as it is supposed, he will change his name and endeavor to escape out of the county on board some vessel. I would request all masters to be careful not to receive him on board. And in case he should offer to ship himself or go passenger on board any vessel, that the captain will cause him to be secured and sent before the next justice of the peace, and the person performing such service shall be rewarded in manner aforementioned. Whoever shall presume to carry the said slave out of the country may expect to be prosecuted with the utmost rigor. It's starting to seem like these men that want to capture these men, it almost seems like they like them. in maybe a different manner. It seems strange. Do the right thing.